Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Indie Spotlight, my new series focused on doing deep dives into some of the interesting aspects of the indie gaming scene. I'm your host, God of Rabbits. Today's subject is I Want to Be the Guy style fan games. There's a lot to go over here, so let's get started. The whole guy gaming phenomenon started in 2007 when Michael K.N. O'Reilly released his game I Want to Be the Guy. I Want to Be the Guy is a free game download that borrowed heavily from other games, reusing and appropriating assets such as artwork and music from all manner of classic gaming titles. For instance, the first boss in I Want to Be the Guy is Mike Tyson, and not just any Mike Tyson, the exact Mike Tyson character model from the 1987 Nintendo classic Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The game was also defined by its hardcore nature and unfairness. It would ask you to complete a room full of pixel-perfect spike jumps, only to drop the floor out at the last possible moment in an attempt to kill you, or shoot a spike at you at the most inconvenient of times. You advance in the game by navigating between a series of save points that you shoot to preserve your current progress. It's important to hit these save spots because any hit kills you in guy games. One of the tenets of this genre is that progress is gated by mastery. Deaths are common and resets are instantaneous. Though it is somewhat easy by today's standards of difficulty in the genre, in 2007 Cayenne had inadvertently created one of the hardest games of its time. As such, its appeal can be easily understood amongst the hardcore gaming crowd. Here was a totally free game that challenged players rather than coddle them in an era where mainstream gaming was catering to a casual audience. It also didn't hurt that the level design was actually pretty good for such an unfair game. One might ask how these games even survive, given that they heavily appropriate the work of major game studios, especially the notoriously litigious Nintendo, who has sued to halt the development of many fan-based endeavors. We often hear of cease and desist letters being sent to amateur dev teams trying to remake existing properties. Guy games seem to be largely immune from these types of takedown requests and lawsuits. This likely occurs because of a combination of a few factors. First, all these games are free, there's no money changing hands, so there's no commercial infringement. Second, these games aren't really trying to supplant an existing product. They usually appropriate small parts of many games at once in a remix-like fashion. In the music world, producers like Girl Talk appropriate in a similar manner that may even prove to be ultimately legal under fair use. It's one thing to make a spiritual sequel to your favorite game, and a whole other thing to steal a small amount of assets from 50 different games in a mashup that doesn't harm the market of the original properties. That is to say, it's not exactly a slam dunk case for it to actually be tested in court, so no publisher has gone there so far. Lastly, the market for these games is pretty small. They only appeal to the hardest of the hardcore and most skillful gamers, so any harm is truly limited, and the upside of litigation just isn't there. I Want to Be the Guy proved to be popular enough to gain a hardcore following and spawn a few sequels. Soon, other developers joined in on the action, creating derivative works that appropriated heavily from I Want to Be the Guy. Since I Want to Be the Guy was the first, the genre is traditionally referred to as guy games, and most embrace the mechanics that were established in I Want to Be the Guy, such as movement and shooting mechanics, spikes, platforms, and the fact that apples are deadly obstacles to be avoided. It's important mechanically to the genre that all these games have the same precise controls because of their notorious difficulty, so they are largely built all on the same platform using the same game engine. Early games were made in Multimedia Fusion 2, and current guy games are made mostly using a program called Game Maker and pre-established templates that include things like physics.
It's Bashi time!
Perhaps the most popular game in the guy game genre is I Want to Be the Bashi, or Bashi for short. Bashi was released in 2010 by the Danish developer and noted box of oatmeal Solgren. Bashi took all the mechanics and difficulty of guy games and amped it up to 11. It's a brutal game filled with bullet hell scenes, jump scares, screen shakes, more jump scares, and just all levels of opportunistic sadism in game form. Bashi's rise is partially attributable to its attractiveness to an early Twitch audience as well. Viewers loved tuning in to watch their favorite streamers get beat up for hours playing the game. In this era, being able to finish Bashi was a kind of rite of passage for streamers. It proved your skillfulness, built your audience, and was fun, watchable content. That is, if it didn't break you in the process. To this day, Bashi is still a popular meme game that is revered in the wider community. There's even a fairly active and dedicated group of speedrunners to the game. The current world record holder is the German streamer BBF, who can blaze through the game in about half an hour, an incredibly remarkable achievement that only came after thousands of hours of practice. There are several other popular guy games out there, including the I Wanna Kill a Camellia series, which is notably even harder and more sadistic than Bashi. Truly though, there are now thousands of free guy game variants, and even subgenres. For instance, you might like bullet hell scenes more, so your subgenre would be avoidance games. Or if you like jumping over endless spike trap configurations, your genre is called needle games. There are several community sites that host these fan games, such as deliciousfruit.com, named after those aforementioned deadly apples. There's an average of more than one new game added every day to these sites, and all of them are generated from the community itself. With all this activity and this dedicated fan base, you might actually ask yourself if a Guy game could be commercially successful. There are a few hurdles to overcome to create such a product, notably the appropriation aspect, but it actually has been done. In 2010, Super Meat Boy was released to wide success and heavy critical acclaim. Super Meat Boy, developed by Team Neat, is spiritually a Guy game with great commercial packaging. It's a 2D platformer of incredible difficulty that features many refinements of existing elements and some new ones. Notably, it has a slightly different control scheme than Guy games, and it's also very playable with a gamepad, which allowed it to bridge the gap onto consoles and greater success. In a nod to its Guy game influences, the kid, the main character in I Wanna Be the Guy, is an unlockable character in Super Meat Boy with his own set of spike-filled stages. Of course, these 3 Guy game-inspired levels also happen to be the hardest found in Super Meat Boy. Super Meat Boy was also heavily influential itself, spurring further successes such as Cuphead. Today, there's a vibrant community of Guy game players on Twitch and YouTube. The Twitch category that everyone streams under is I Wanna Be the Guy. Here you might find the likes of BBF, Stonk, or Witwix, or many others taking on these games. These games are also a popular mainstay at GDQ and ESA style events.
Oh, it says ESA here. What a surprise.
Oh, what a surprise.
So that's a short introduction to Guy games, the most technically challenging genre of single-player games out there. I don't really play them that much myself, as they're too frustrating and challenging for me most days, but I love watching others mercilessly crush these games and showcase their incredible talent. That about wraps up this very first episode of Indie Spotlight. If you want more of this type of content delivered to you on a regular basis, or just want to help out the channel, please like this video and hit the subscribe button below. This has been God of Rabbits, thanks for watching, and have a great day.